Hello, dear friends. The volatility that the world economy is experiencing is a never-ending story because every day brings alarming news for financial stability. It would be preferable for the situation to be clarified instead of living in permanent unrest in the financial markets. Opinion piece. Risk of default. A global domino effect could occur. The default haunts the world economy. Stock market recovers, shares rise. Russia calms volatile gas markets. Ruble strengthens to a 14-month high. Bitcoin rises to a 5-month high. European gas price rises more than $1,900. Putin pledged supply, gas price falls. Europe's coal price hits another high. Electricity prices soar in Spain. European industry slumps under pressure. Oil prices could rise to $100 a barrel. Senate to back debt extension. The economy is imploding around the world. They want to regulate cryptocurrencies starting in 2022. Cuba activates oil spill protocol. Facebook shares face serious trouble. Peru's Prime Minister resigns after 2 months in office. Let's start. Giant JP Morgan warns that a default would be a catastrophe for the global economy. A US default or cessation of payments would cause a complete catastrophe in the global economy, said Jamie Dimon, chief executive of financial firm JP Morgan Chase. In quotes, a default would now be unprecedented. The things that we know could be triggered are very bad and could potentially be worse. Dimon warned during a virtual meeting with President Biden. He also warned of a domino effect. In quotes again, day one would be bad, but the cascading effect in the weeks that follow could be anything from a recession to a complete catastrophe for the global economy. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen warned that as October 18th, the country will not have the necessary funds to meet its obligations and stressed the need for Congress to raise the debt limit, which would be within its prerogatives. An unprecedented default on the federal debt would lead to total chaos, in quotes, said Jacob Funk Kindergarten of the Peterson Institute for International Economics. In quotes, it's a bombshell. You basically blow up the global financial system. The debt ceiling, a limit on the amount of the federal government can borrow the service debt, has been routinely raised by Congress when necessary since it was established in 1917. But with the rancor between Democrats and Republicans reaching a level rarely seen in history, there is a dangerously little cooperation even on an issue as vital as this one. Definition. Default is a failure to pay a debt including interest or principal on a loan or security according to Investopedia. A default can occur when a borrower is unable to make payments on time, fails to make payments, or avoids or fails to make payments. Individuals, companies, and even countries can default if they are unable to meet their debt obligations. Creditors usually calculate the risks of default well in advance. A financial default, debt default, or suspension of payments arises when a person or organization cannot afford to pay the interest or principal on a debt when it becomes due, according to Economipedia. A debtor may default when it is unable to make the required payment or is unwilling to pay that debt. Therefore, financial default occurs when a debtor is unable to meet the legal obligation to pay its debt. To better understand the concept of default, it is important to know the difference between insolvency, default, or bankruptcy. Insolvency is the ability of a company to pay its debts now or in the future, and default is basically the failure to pay a debt at a given time. It is often the case that default precedes or is caused by an insolvency situation. Bankruptcy, on the other hand, is the situation in which a person enters by not paying his debt as a consequence of that insolvency. Default. Although it is not common, countries can undo default on their sovereign debt periodically. This happens when the government is unable or unwilling to meet its fiscal promises to pay its bondholders. Argentina, Russia, and Lebanon are just a few of the governments that have defaulted in recent decades. Sovereign debt is central government debt. It is debt issued by the national government in foreign currency in order to finance the growth and development of the issuing country. The stability of the issuing government can be provided by the country's sovereign credit ratings, which help investors weigh the risks when evaluating investments in sovereign debt. The economy is imploding around the world. People are feeling inflation and fuel costs are skyrocketing. The people will want someone responsible for all of this. If people lose faith in the currency and credibility implodes, the monetary system will collapse, according to X22 report. Economy. Stock market recoveries. Pulled back from a surge in energy prices, Wall Street stocks railed Wednesday after the Senate's top Republican backed a debt ceiling extension and Russia calmed volatile natural gas markets in Europe. Stocks turned positive on Wednesday, with all three major stock indexes rising during the afternoon session, following a report that Congress may reach a short-term deal to raise the government's borrowing limit and avoid a default. Stocks erased morning losses as Mitch McConnell made a debt limit offer. McConnell proposes deal with Democrats to suspend debt limit. Senate Republican Minority Leader Mitch McConnell on Wednesday proposed a deal with Democrats that would help them suspend the debt ceiling before the country defaults. Wall Street ends higher on investor optimism of a debt ceiling deal. The New York Stock Exchange closed higher Wednesday as investors became more optimistic that a deal could be reached between congressional Democrats and Republicans to avoid a default on the nation's debt. What would the Fed do if the government hit the debt ceiling? The Fed would not stand on the sidelines if the Treasury Department ran out of money this month. The most likely model is an emergency plan devised years ago. Markets. Facebook shares face serious trouble. The company's stock began trading about 3% lower Wednesday than the previous week after an outage that prevented users from accessing services. Oil could rise to $100 a barrel. Wednesday's rise in oil prices marked a fifth straight day on gains on signs of stress in crude, natural gas and coal markets. Lithium jumps again. Lithium prices extended their year-long rally as growing demand causes a shortage of the key battery material. Prices have more than doubled in the past year. Demand for the material used in electric cars and renewable energy storage has soared, and although miners are looking to increase supply, there is not enough lithium to meet consumption. Cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin rises to 5-month high. Bitcoin rose Wednesday to its highest level in 5 months as market confidence continued to improve, due in part to support from a hedge fund controlled by billionaire investor George Soros. Bitcoin rises above $55,000 for first time in 5 months. Bitcoin climbed above $55,000 for the first time since May, after Secretary Chairman Gary Gensler said Tuesday that the U.S. has no intention of banning cryptocurrencies after China has continually cracked down on the digital currency space. The Bitcoin hit an all-time high at around $64,889 in April, according to CoinDesk data. Cryptocurrency could be subject to wash sale rule. House Democrats recently released details on their expected tax hike proposal, and one of the many provisions calls for the application of the wash sale rule to cryptocurrencies starting January 1st, 2022. In quotes, applying the wash sale rules to cryptocurrencies would be a further obstacle to their widespread use as a practical medium of exchange, said Jean Lac Baudem, wealth advisor at Lucent Wealth Planning. Americas. Uruguay's central bank issues warnings on cryptocurrency use. Like Mexico or Costa Rica, Uruguay's central bank also spoke out on cryptocurrencies, stating that they are risky investments, unsafe without institutional backing, and lend themselves to money laundering. World Bank forecasts economic rebound for the Americas in 2021 and calls for reforms. The World Bank forecasts an economic rebound for the Americas and the Caribbean this year, according to its latest regional report published on Wednesday, in which it calls for urgent reforms to overcome the crisis and avoid another lost decade. The multilateral organization again revised upward its forecast for economic expansion in the Americas for 2021 to 6.3% compared to the 5.2% projected at mid-year. But the figure is still below the 6.7% contraction on 2020. Cuba activates protocol for oil spill in a well on the north coast of Matanzas. In Cuba, an oil spill was recorded in the Yumuri 201 well on the north coast, near the city of Matanzas, in the province of the same name, for which the authorities activated protocol for these cases in order to contain the crude oil and prevent it from reaching the sea. Peru's Prime Minister resigns 2 months after taking office. Peruvian President Pedro Castillo announced on Wednesday the resignation of his controversial Prime Minister Guido Bellido, a leader of the rallying Perú Libre Party of Marxist line, in a new political storm in the mining country, a little more than 2 months after taking office. Europe. Apple to face European Union antitrust charges over its NFC chip. Apple will face an EU antitrust charge over its NFC chip technology, a move that puts it at risk of a possible fine and could force it to open up its mobile payment system to rivals. European gas prices soar above $1,900. Gas prices in Europe broke new record highs on Wednesday, rising sharply above $1,900 per thousand cubic meters. That equates to $1,086 per megawatt hour. European coal price hits another high. The price of coal in Europe renewed its all-time high again, topping $300 per ton. The price of thermal coal rose by $40 per ton on October 5th. The price of electricity soars in Spain to 288.53 euros. The price breaks all records so far and is 26% higher than the last highest price ever recorded. Rising energy prices sent shivers through markets. Soaring energy prices caused alarm among European leaders and sent shivers through world markets on Wednesday, raising concerns about a winter fuel crisis that could play into the hands of gas-rich Russia. European industry plummets in the face of mounting energy pressure. European industry is approaching the breaking point as the energy crisis worsens by the day. Power and gas prices are hitting record highs almost daily, and some companies have temporarily shut down operations because they are becoming too expensive to run. The pressure will intensify as winter approaches and Europeans begin to turn on their heaters, pushing more executives to make tough decisions about whether or not to keep their production plants open. The electricity crisis was not caused by a perfect storm. Recent news from the global electricity sector seems discouraging. South Americans who rely heavily on hydropower are facing drought-induced shortages. Hard to believe in a continent intertwined by 3 huge river systems. The alternatives for South American electricity users are increased reliance on fossil fuels or turning off the lights. And unlike relatively cheap hydroelectricity, generating electricity with fossil fuels entails fuel costs, which drives up prices. Oil and natural gas prices fall on signs of rising supply. Oil and natural gas prices fell Wednesday after data showed increases in U.S. domestic production and inventories of oil and gasoline. And Russian President Vladimir Putin hinted he could help stabilize gas prices in Europe by increasing production. The drop came after European natural gas prices soared 40% over 2 days on fears of tight supplies and low inventories ahead of the winter season, which threatens to be colder than usual. Brent crude oil prices, the international benchmark, were down 1.6% at $81.2 a barrel after surpassing the $80 a barrel mark on Tuesday. Europe's 6 common stance. The European Union is trying to find a common approach to rising gas and electricity prices. The debate has reached the European Parliament on Wednesday, where several MEPs have called for an investigation into the European Union gas market and called for reducing Europe's energy dependence as soon as possible. The European Parliament called for speed and unity in the face of escalating energy prices. The majority groups in the European Parliament on Wednesday called on the European Commission to act urgently and propose changes in the design of energy markets in the face of rising prices, which in many countries is resulting in worrying peaks in the final bill of households and businesses. Help from Russia. Gas prices fall in Europe after Putin pledges to guarantee a record supply. Gas prices in Europe turned around on Wednesday after Russia made a move. After a 60% rise in the last 2 days, gas futures fall on the continent after Russian President Vladimir Putin pledged to guarantee supply and thus help stabilize global energy markets, according to El Economista. 1 month European gas futures have reached over 150 euros megawatt hour during the morning, at the height of the gas crisis. However, after the Kremlin's announcement, futures have returned to the 100 euros megawatt hour zone, where they were at the beginning of the week. Putin calls European policy that drove up gas prices wrong. The European Commission was wrong to reject long-term gas contracts, Vladimir Putin believes. He believes that this was one of the main factors that drove the price of the blue fuel to more than $1,900 per thousand cubic meters. Meanwhile, the countries that buy it in the long term do so at a lower price. Ruble strengthens to 14 months high against euro. The Russian currency closed Wednesday below 84 rubles per euro, its strongest since July 2020, while the ruble traded slightly weaker against the US currency at 72.59 rubles per dollar after hitting a 3-week high on Tuesday. Indian rupee hits 5.5-month low. The Indian rupee fell to its lowest level since April, while the benchmark 10-year bond closed at its lowest in nearly a year and a half, as a rebound in global crude oil prices revived concerns about imported inflation. China's real estate fantasy turns into a nightmare. Fantasia Holdings missed a dollar bond payment Monday and could face a similar fate for many more developers who overextended themselves in the boom years. Chinese brands flocked to Paris to go global in high fashion. Chinese fashion brands, including Shangxia, iCycle, and Fosun Fashion Group, are embracing Paris as a springboard for their international ambitions, opening flagship stores in the city and hiring French designers to burnish their credentials. And an air show turns into a drone shower in China. Residents of the China city of Zhengzhou saw another kind of show, a real drone shower. These drones were supposed to be part of a show in front of a shopping mall, but due to an operational error, it ended in an incident that was caught on video. In the images, you can see how dozens of well-lit drones descend from the sky, some in a slow and controlled manner, while others plummeted. Taiwan pushes new arms spending. Military tensions with China are at their worst in more than 40 years. Taiwan's defense minister said as he promoted a new arms spending package to lawmakers, days after a record number of Chinese aircraft flew into the island's air defense zone. Taiwan says solid commitment to US. Taiwan's foreign ministry said Wednesday that Washington had assured them its approach to the island had not changed, a day after President Biden said that he and China's President Xi Jinping agreed to honor Taiwan agreements. Curious. New named drone. Repeated. New name drone from Spain's National Police. Spain's National Police Force has a new autonomous aerial vehicle that aims to put Spain at the forefront of European police drones. The modern vehicle has an oval shape, is equipped with 2 seats and 2 tablets inside. Its weight is only 600 kilos, which is a significant reduction compared to the Eurocopter EC-135 Condor helicopters, which weighed 1,800 kilos. Google wants to use artificial intelligence to time traffic lights. Alphabet Inc.'s Google reduced fuel use and traffic delays by 10 to 20% at 4 locations in Israel by using artificial intelligence to optimize signal lights, and plans to test the software in Rio de Janeiro. A man sues a psychic in the US for failing to destroy his ex-girlfriend's alleged curse that made him unhappy in marriage. The psychic asked for $5,100 to remove the spell, arguing that otherwise he and his family would be unhappy and in danger. A man has filed a fraud lawsuit against the psychic in Superior Court in Torrance, California, alleging that she falsely promised him that she could remove an alleged curse on his marriage, local media reports. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.